This dance is for the one I've secretly loved all these 10 years. My husband announced at our wedding reception. He walked right past me and invited my sister to dance. The entire room erupted in applause. But then I walked up to my father, who was sitting at the head table, and asked one loud question that made my husband choke and sent my sister to the emergency room. Hello everyone. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Enjoy the story. But before that moment, before that question was even uttered, there was the party. The biggest, loudest, most lavish celebration our city had ever seen. The wedding hall at the Grand Magnolia Ballroom buzzed like a disturbed hive. Hundreds of guests, the entire business and social elite of our thriving mid-sized city, ate, drank, and laughed. The string orchestra played something light and non-intrusive. Crystal chandeliers bathed everything in a warm golden glow, and servers glided silently between the tables, delivering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Nia Hayes sat at the main table in the bride's spot in her flawless white gown, feeling like an exhibit in a museum. She smiled, nodded, and accepted congratulations. But a dull, inexplicable dread was building inside her. Her husband, Darius Vance, who had become her husband just 3 hours earlier, was magnificent. Tall, charming, in a designer tuxedo. He was the life of the party. He moved easily from table to table, shaking men's hands, kissing the ladies' cheeks, his infectious laugh echoing across the floor. He was the ideal son-in-law for her father, Elijah Hayes. Ambitious, sharp, from a good though recently struggling family. He was the perfect husband for her, Nia, the reliable, serious, elder daughter who had spent her entire life doing exactly what was expected of her. She looked at her father, Elijah Hayes, silver-haired and authoritative, sat at the head of the table like a king on his throne. He was pleased. Everything was going according to his plan. His business empire, built on food processing, was now cemented by this strategic corporate merger. He occasionally cast approving glances at Nia, and those glances made her uneasy, as if she had just been successfully sold. Next to her father sat her younger sister, Simone, bright, capricious, and always the center of attention. Today, she wore a tight wine-red dress that accentuated her figure. Simone was bored. She listlessly poked at her dessert and shot sultry glances at Darius. Nia was used to those glances. Simone always looked that way at everything that belonged to Nia. First her toys, then her friends, and now her husband. But Darius, it seemed, paid her no mind, at least not today. The MC for the evening, especially flown in from Los Angeles, announced a toast from the groom. Darius walked to the center of the room and took the microphone. The guests quieted down, turning toward him. He surveyed them with a beaming smile that, however, did not linger on Nia. "My dear friends, my dearest family," he began, his smooth baritone filling the hall. "I am the happiest man alive. Today, I have joined my life with the Hayes family, a family I have known and respected for 10 years. 10 long years." He paused, and there was something theatrical, something rehearsed about that silence. A lot has happened over these years, but all this time, one secret, one great love has lived in my heart. The guests hummed approvingly. How romantic. Nia felt a cold knot tighten in her throat. She had known Darius for exactly 10 years. He came to their factory as a young specialist right out of college. But she remembered no secret love. Their relationship had begun just 1 year ago, swiftly and frankly professionally. Her father introduced him as a promising young executive, and things took off. And I believe that today, on this most important day, I must finally be honest with all of you and with myself. Darius continued, raising his voice. He looked toward the head table, but not at Nia. His gaze was fixed on Simone. "This dance, this first dance in my new life, is for the one I've secretly loved all these 10 years. Nia's heart skipped a beat. What was this? Some idiotic joke? A prank? The orchestra struck up a slow, tender melody. Darius, still holding the microphone, walked toward the main table. He was coming straight for her. Nia began to rise from her seat, tangling herself in the folds of her wedding dress, ready to accept his hand. But he walked past. He did not even glance at her. He passed just 3 feet from her chair, leaving a trail of expensive cologne and icy humiliation in his wake. He approached Simone. Simone blossomed. There wasn't a shadow of surprise on her face, only triumph. She rose gracefully, extended her hand, and he led her to the center of the floor. The world narrowed down to that one spot for Nia. Her husband was twirling her sister in a dance. And at that moment, the worst thing happened. The guests, they started applauding tentatively at first, then louder and louder. They didn't understand. They decided it was some grand gesture, a touching family tradition. Oh, how sweet. What a surprise. So touching, a dance with the maid of honor, echoed from every side. The applause hammered like a funeral march for her life. Nia sat in her white gown under that golden light and felt herself shattering into a million pieces. She saw her father's smiling face, applauding too, approving this farce. She saw Darius's back and Simone's happy face resting on his shoulder. She was superfluous at this celebration. She was merely a function, a shield for something else. She wanted to scream, to run away, to break down right here in front of hundreds of eyes. But instead, something inside her clicked, something cold, hard, and sharp as ice. She remembered a conversation with her father 2 months ago. His harsh words, his ultimatum. You will marry Vance. It is non-negotiable. He has to become part of the family. He has a debt hanging over his head that could sink both him and us if it surfaces the wrong way. You are the guarantee. You are the cement for this deal. Back then, she didn't argue. She had always been the obedient daughter. But now everything had changed. The deal was done. She had fulfilled her part. And they had simply thrown her away. The tears dried before they even began. She slowly, very slowly, placed her glass of champagne on the table. She took another full glass and stood up. The ringing in her ears muffled the music and the applause. She saw only one target, her father. She walked toward him. Every step was an effort, as if she were wading through thick water. Her voluminous dress snagged on the legs of chairs. Guests stepped aside, looking bewildered at the bride, who had abandoned her seat. The music was still playing. Darius and Simone were still dancing, oblivious to everything around them. She reached the head table, stopping directly in front of her father. He stopped applauding and looked up at her with cold annoyance, as if to say, "What do you want? Don't interrupt." Nia took a deep breath, filling her lungs, and asked the question. She did not yell. She did not cry. She spoke loudly and clearly so everyone in the room heard her in the sudden silence because the music abruptly cut off mid-note. "Father," her voice was even and cold. "Since Darius just confessed his love for Simone, does this mean you're forgiving the $750,000 debt that you forced me to marry him to cover?" Time stopped. The applause died as abruptly as if it had been cut off with a knife. Someone dropped a fork, and the clatter of metal on the plate seemed deafening. An absolute deadly silence fell over the room. All eyes were fixed on her, on her father, on the dancing couple, frozen in the center of the floor. Darius choked. He coughed so violently he doubled over. The champagne he had drunk before his toast caught in his throat. His face flushed red. Simone pulled away from him. Her eyes were wide with horror. She looked at Nia, then at her father, then at the guests. Hundreds of pairs of eyes, admiring just a minute ago, now drilled into her like an auger. A public exposure, not just the exposure of an affair, but the exposure that she had been a commodity in a dirty financial deal. Her face went as white as the tablecloth. She began to gasp for air. Her chest heaved spasmodically. Aye, she croaked, and suddenly her legs gave way. She collapsed to the floor like a cut flower. Panic erupted. Someone screamed. Guests scrambled from their seats. Her father jumped up, overturning the table. "A doctor. Call an ambulance immediately," he yelled, rushing towards Simone. Darius, still coughing, rushed over, too. The hall dissolved into chaos. A blur of motion. Someone was on the phone. Others were trying to revive Simone. Nia stood in the same spot, clutching the still full glass of champagne. She watched the pandemonium, feeling neither shodden nor satisfaction, only emptiness. 10 minutes later, medics arrived. They swiftly and professionally loaded Simone onto a stretcher. She was unconscious. As they carried her past Nia, one of the paramedics gave her a swift, judgmental glance, as if she were to blame for everything. The stretcher was wheeled out of the room. Darius bolted after them. At that moment, Nia looked at her father. She expected anything, a scream, an accusation, maybe even a physical blow. But she was looking for even a drop of support in his eyes. She was still his daughter. Elijah straightened up. He turned to her, his face purple with rage. He stepped right up to her. His eyes were glacial. He seized her arm above the elbow, his fingers dug into her skin like claws. "You foolish girl," he hissed so quietly that no one but her could hear. Hatred rang in his voice. "You didn't expose him. You just destroyed this family." He flung her arm away, turned, and strode quickly toward the exit, following the ambulance without looking back. Nia was left alone in the middle of a ruined celebration in her pristine white wedding dress, which now felt like a shroud. Guests watched her with judgment, fear, and curiosity. She was the center of attention, but she had never felt more isolated in her life. The family had just passed judgment on her. Nia remained standing there. The guests, seized by a wave of awkwardness, quickly offered hurried farewells and dispersed, careful not to meet her gaze. The Grand Magnolia Ballroom, full of laughter and music just 10 minutes ago, rapidly emptied. Servers silently cleared the nearly untouched food from the tables. The party was dead. She set the glass down. Her hands were steady. Everything inside her was burned to ash. Only cold, ringing cinder remained. She had to do something. Go somewhere. After the official part, the family and closest friends always gathered in the smaller banquet room for a private celebration. She was family. At least she thought she was until this evening. Gathering the hem of the heavy, now alien-feeling dress, she walked toward the inconspicuous door at the end of the corridor. Marcus, the security guard, whom she had known for years, blocked her path. He wouldn't meet her eyes. His gaze was fixed elsewhere on the richly decorated wall. "Ms. Hayes, you can't go in there." His words were quiet, almost apologetic. "What do you mean I can't, Marcus?" Nia's voice was even devoid of emotion. "My family is in there." Mr. Hayes gave the order. He finally met her eyes, which held a mixture of pity and fear. She screamed, pointing a trembling finger at her father. "He told me he planned everything. He said Mom was weak, that her heart would kill her anyway soon. He said she was in our way, in the way of the business. He said I was the future of this family and she was the past dragging us back." She spoke, gasping between sobs and the words that burst forth after 10 years of silence. "The pills. He said we just had to help her so she wouldn't suffer. He said no one would find out. He forced me. I didn't want to. I didn't want to." It was a full, unconditional confession. Theft, conspiracy, murder, and all of it under the light of crystal chandeliers before the eyes of the city's shocked elite under the merciless gaze of 2 recording smartphones. At that moment, people in police uniform quickly entered the hall. Andre, seeing that the climax was near, had managed to call his contact in the precinct. Chaos erupted. Camera flashes. Malcolm had pulled out his professional camera. They flickered, snatching faces contorted with horror from the dim light. Police officers pushing through the stunned guests headed straight for them. "Elijah Hayes, you are under arrest on suspicion of organizing a murder. Simone Hayes, you are under arrest on suspicion of murder. Darius Vance, you are under arrest on suspicion of complicity and grand larceny." Elijah was silent. He stared into space. His face was utterly impassive. He had lost. Simone was sobbing, screaming that she was innocent, clinging to the officer's arms. Darius muttered something about cooperating with the investigation, about telling everything. Handcuffs clicked on their wrists. They were led through the crowd of stunned guests toward the exit. The ball of triumph had turned into the scaffold. The legacy of the Hayes family was destroyed in one evening publicly and irreversibly. Nia stood motionless, clutching the diary and the ledger to her chest. Vivian walked up to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over, child." Nia looked up at her. There was neither joy nor malice in her eyes, only enormous, all-consuming exhaustion. "No," she said quietly. "It's only just beginning." 6 months later, the morning was cold but sunny. The air smelled of metal and fresh paint. Nia stood on the loading dock looking down at the grounds of Hayes Family Foods. After the sensational court case that rocked the entire nation, the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Elijah Hayes and Simone received long prison sentences for murder. Darius, as a key witness, got off with probation for fraud and disappeared from the city. Nia, as the only untainted heir, was appointed external administrator of the company by the court. It was a heavy, nearly impossible task to resurrect the business from the ashes, but she succeeded. Vivian stood beside her. She was now Nia's right hand, her advisor, her true family. "We're starting the conveyor belt in 10 minutes, Vivian said, watching the workers bustling below. "People are ready to get back to work." "Me, too," Nia smiled. She had sold the small sanctuary apartment near River Bend. The place that held her mother's pain had to do some good. With all the proceeds, and adding a portion of her own funds, she created a charitable foundation named after her mother, the Eleanor Hayes Foundation. The foundation's first and main project was the complete renovation of the very children's home her father had poisoned for years. Now the foundation ensured they received deliveries of the freshest, highest quality products. Her victory was not in vengeance. It was in the restoration of justice. Nia looked at the factory logo. The old letters Hayes Family Foods had been taken down. In their place shone a new laconic inscription, Eleanor's Products. Below, a whistle blew, and the conveyor belt slowly crawled, carrying the first cans of new, honest product. Nia took a deep breath of the cold morning air. Her war was over. Her life was beginning anew, and she was ready for it. And so this complex and dramatic story concludes. My friends, a story about the betrayal of those closest to us, but at the same time, a story about the incredible strength of one woman who was able to go against everyone and restore justice. I'm sure it left a mark on everyone. And perhaps the main question that remains with all of us after the finale, did Nia do the right thing? On the one hand, she exposed thieves, fraudsters, and even murderers. She stopped a terrible crime as her father and sister had been poisoning orphans and the elderly for years. She cleared her mother's name and revived the family business on the principles of integrity. Her victory seems absolute. But on the other hand, the price of that victory was horrible. She personally destroyed her own family, sending her biological father and sister to prison. Was justice worth such total annihilation? Was there another perhaps less brutal path for her? Could she have found the strength to forgive them? Or are such crimes unforgivable? What do you think about this? We would really like to hear your opinion. Perhaps you have some questions about the plot. Did something seem incomplete, or are you just curious about what happened to the other characters? Please don't hesitate to write everything that is on your mind in the comments below this video. I will make sure to read all your thoughts. And of course, if this story touched you, if you sympathized with Nia and followed her struggle with bated breath, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. Your likes and comments are the best reward for us and an incentive to create new, even more captivating stories for you. All the best. At the end of this video, a window will appear in the middle of the screen. Please click on this window. Our other most interesting stories will be